I don't want to keep going super long, but I have to watch some of this video in order to make my description of my video make sense.
Artificial intelligence is a technology.
So next we're going to watch some OpenAI stuff. Here we go. Sometimes I watch this guy just to cope a little about I hate AI. I hate AI. Like I'm not a fan of AI. And so this channel, Young Ye, if that's how you say it, like I think they do like good reporting, but it also gives me that feel good, that cope that someday the OpenAI bubble will pop.
That, of course, impacts gaming in a lot of ways, but it's also
This one's called OpenAI Faced Mass Boycott After Granting the Government AI-Driven Mass Surveillance.
much bigger than just gaming. It is a technology that is incredibly powerful, that has the potential to impact just about every industry on this planet. And it's important to talk about the lines that need to be drawn, as well as the moral implications of companies who pursue AI based on the methodologies with which they're pursuing that technology, the actions that they kind of partake in, and the words that they speak. And OpenAI in particular is one of the biggest factors in this conversation due to, I mean, just how early they got into this race and the amount of impact that they've had. And a lot of that impact, many people believe to be rather negative. OpenAI, you know, from the way they've completely wrecked the computing components market due to their pursuit of essentially hoarding components to try to stave off competition, to try to stay ahead of the race, and kind of pursuing their ambitions at all costs, combined with the irresponsible ways in which this technology is being used in such a way that it's negatively impacting the environment, it's negatively impacting artists, it's negatively impacting the very people that AI technology is advertised to benefit, is something that is supposed to like enhance humans, but in reality, it's a technology that is replacing humans. It's negatively impacting just the way misinformation has become so prevalent. It all paves to a road where the public is beginning to realize that AI companies don't necessarily have our best interests in mind. They would like to see these companies just suffer a downfall that will hopefully signal a rejection of abusive ways of using this technology, or exploitative ways, or ways that ultimately just fuel further class divides, fuel just further empowerment of corporations, and, you know, just a deployment of this technology that isn't ultimately beneficial to society as a whole. Now, I've talked a lot about OpenAI over the last couple of months, and I'd like to give you the latest update on where this company is at. They're continuing to bleed money. The PR surrounding the company just keeps getting worse. And
to be fair, though, all of these tech companies bleed money for the first like 5 years or so. So maybe OpenAI, I mean, OpenAI is bleeding a lot more, but like Uber did this, Amazon did this, like these companies don't usually turn a profit for like 3 to 4 years. And so like, you know, fingers crossed, I hope OpenAI collapses under its own like weight as well, but I'm not really holding my breath necessarily.
Now we're getting to a point where the world is starting to kind of like boycott OpenAI due to some of the stances that they've recently taken. Lately, you might be seeing plenty of headlines such as this one. Cancel GPT movement goes mainstream after OpenAI closes deal with the US Department of War as Anthropic refuses to surveil. So that's going to be the main topic of today's video. I'm going to kind of walk you through everything that's transpired on that front. But yeah, you can see scrolling down all of the embedded posts that highlight people just straight up showing their canceled subscriptions. And there's a movement that's gained tons of traction.
This is all gives me cope, though. I think that like we need numbers, not just like posts on X or whatever, to know for sure, which maybe he'll get into later.
I think much more than maybe even OpenAI anticipated. You've already seen CEO Sam Altman talk about how people unfairly judge AI for how much energy it consumes because human beings consume a lot of energy in order to train them and raise them and whatnot, which was just so incredibly deep.
It's like he's like trying to become a supervillain. Like it's like every dystopian sci-fi novel, like he watched it and he was like, hold my beer, like I'm gonna be the supervillain.
Humanizing. But then we have developments surrounding how OpenAI is basically willing to make a deal with anyone that will give them the money to be able to support their endeavors due to the incredibly fast rate at which they're burning money to a point where revenue just doesn't seem like it's able to catch up. And so this latest story concerns the US government and the way artificial intelligence, again, we're going far beyond just gaming. It has a huge impact on gaming, but also on things like surveillance and things like, you know, weapons. It should come as no surprise that the Pentagon and the military are interested in artificial.
I mean, the primary purpose is going to be surveillance. The whole like using it for weapons or targeting people, like they're just using it as an excuse, which it's like, you know, it's a good excuse. They're going to be like, if they're ever tried for crimes, they'll be like, I didn't choose to kill that kid. It was the AI. Um, but I do think surveillance is a very real aspect that it will be used for. And I mean, that's going to be like the primary industry in America is about to be just suppressing the own populace. So it's probably, it might work out for them, to be honest.
Artificial intelligence. And not long ago, I talked about this developing situation.
Also, if the government gets this involved with OpenAI, then it's not going to let it fail. Like the same way, like the government was so involved in like, I don't know, like banking and stuff. Like there, when it or like crypto, like there's these things now that the government has taken a vested stake in making sure to maintain that it's propped up. So unless the actual government collapses, like in terms of its monetary value or bond holdings or whatever, um, like if it's going to take a significant portion of like a stake in OpenAI, then it's not going to let it fail.
Where Anthropic was essentially threatened because they would not forego certain lines that they drew in the sand. Namely, that Anthropic, one of OpenAI's main rivals, straight up told the US government who were interested in working.
This stuff, like, okay, cool, thank you, Anthropic, but like, we live under capitalism. Like, whatever safeguards you put up will inevitably be taken down within 5-10 years. Like, it's like, like, what are we, like, you can't have safeguards under capitalism like that. You can't have a company be altruistic. The whole point of capitalism is like the most evil companies rise to the top. If you are less evil than other companies, you're not going to succeed. You have to be as evil as possible if you want to survive. Like that's the whole like point of capitalism, or not the point, but that's just like the way that it works. So yeah, okay, you're saying putting a line in the sand that no safeguards, but someone else will come along and say, oh, or like you're putting a line in the sand saying, oh, here's some safeguards that we're gonna always maintain, but someone will always come in and be like, nah, we're not doing that. Like
with Anthropic and utilizing their technology, that they would not allow for the mass surveillance of Americans with the usage of their artificial intelligence, and that they would not allow for the development of fully autonomous weaponry. Basically, Anthropic made the stance of like, our technology is incredibly powerful, and we do believe there is some responsibility to ensure that this technology is not used for nefarious purposes or for really destructive purposes. The Pentagon did not like that moral stance, and so they threatened to essentially deem Anthropic a national security risk or a supply chain risk, which would mean that anyone who wants to work with the U.S. government,
I really wish they would. I really hope they do that. That would be so funny.
would not be able to work with Anthropic and would essentially put Anthropic in a very precarious situation from a business standpoint. The threat being either you do what we want and you allow us to use your technology in any way, shape, or form the way we deem it appropriate to use it, or we screw over your company. So those talks were ongoing for a while, with reports from February 14th to February 16th highlighting that whole ongoing situation and talks behind the scenes. And then that kind of came to a head on February 26, 2026, when Anthropic released the following statement in regards to discussions with the Department of War. And in this statement, Anthropic basically highlights how they will not allow for the mass domestic surveillance of citizens, as well as the development of fully autonomous weapons with their AI technology, and that's a line that they're not going to back away from. And the end result was that the current administration in the United States ordered all federal agencies in the U.S. government to immediately stop using Anthropic's technology. Basically saying, we're done doing business with you because you dared draw some lines in the sand in terms of ensuring that this technology isn't abused. And all of that does relate to the latest developments surrounding OpenAI, who recently got in bed with the U.S. government in regards to this particular issue. Now, just the day after Anthropic made their stands clear, CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, came on the news and seemed to express like a respect for Anthropic's stance, and almost seemed to
this guy, he is a broken man. Like I don't know what happened to him. Like I just remember he was such like I feel like he was so optimistic back in the day. Like when OpenAI was first coming about, like before they had ChatGPT or whatever, like he was just such like a young spring chicken that like he was wide-eyed and ready to change the world. Look at him now. He looks like shit, dude. He looks so sad. Like his eyes have just turned into a permanent frown. Like this dude, I don't know. It's like whatever. He's head of like, an evil corporation, but they all are to some extent. So No
suggest that
sympathies
he
for
would
me.
kind of back a similar ideal, saying that for all the differences I have with Anthropic, I mostly trust them as a company, and I think they really do care about safety. And the way this was interpreted is that OpenAI is drawing the same lines that Anthropic are. AI as a technology already feels like it's crossed multiple lines and multiple
Pointless.
boundaries that
Capitalism will
many people
degrade
feel
it
shouldn't be
eventually.
crossed. But the ultimate line is things like surveillance of mass citizens and use
The
of
only thing that will stop it is if we have a functioning government that creates a law that stops it. Like, but we don't have that. We're not gonna have that anytime soon. So, this arbitrary line that they, out of the good, these corporations, out of the goodness of their hearts, they decided to set, it will inevitably get crossed. Like,
this powerful technology for automated weapons. And Anthropic said, no, we are absolutely not giving in to those kinds of demands. And Sam Altman seemed to be in the space of like, I respect that. And that initially indicated to people that Sam Altman would basically follow in Anthropic's footsteps when it comes to this specific issue. But on February 27th, 2026, he straight up came out and basically highlighted how Sam Altman and OpenAI basically caved to the demands of the US government and ultimately decided to lend their technology. Now, he tries to paint a more positive picture, trying to say that he also draws lines and that the technology, the way it will be used by the US government, will not allow for the crossing of those lines. But the fact that Anthropic was shunned by the US government, despite having worked with them for so long, and then replaced by OpenAI, I think only highlights that there is definitely some kind of give that OpenAI had that Anthropic did.
like I said, the more evil you are, the more success you will have. That's capitalism, baby.
And it's clear that certain compromises were made when it comes to drawing lines in the sand that made the US government happy enough to work with OpenAI over Anthropic. So here's how Sam Altman phrases it. Tonight, we reached an agreement with the Department of War to deploy our models in their classified network. In all of our interactions, the DoW displayed a deep respect for safety and a desire to partner to achieve the best possible outcome. And Sam Altman specifically highlights how he takes it very seriously to ensure important safety principles such as prohibitions on domestic mass surveillance, as well as human responsibility for the use of force, including for autonomous weapon systems. The DoW agrees with these principles, reflects them in law and policy, and we put them into our
No,
agreement.
they don't.
But if that's
No,
the
they
case, then
don't.
why wouldn't they just
No, they don't. I think if you are sentient, then you should be like, nah, that's not true.
agree to Anthropic's lines that they drew in the sand? Why would they shun Anthropic to the degree that they have if Sam Altman is insisting that the Department of War agrees with the principles of not using AI for mass domestic surveillance or using AI for essentially autonomous weapon systems? The only reason the US government would work with Sam Altman and OpenAI over Anthropic is that Sam Altman and OpenAI made some concessions when it comes to giving the Department of War and the US government just a lot more
For
freedom
sure.
than Anthropic would have when it comes to how AI technology is used. So a lot of people are taking to essentially
I
admire
love all his figures, though. Someday, once I'm making bank off of my YouTube channel, I'm gonna buy a bunch of figures, and I'll put them all up. Even I'll have to probably adjust my camera, but I'll put them all in my background. They'll surround my wife, who's behind me playing video games.
admonishing Sam Altman and OpenAI, and they were already like not particularly popular, but now that's been taken to a whole new level. In fact, community notes are already saying things like government officials have contradicted Sam's claim, saying OpenAI will allow the DoW or Department of War to use their models for all lawful purposes. This could allow for uses Anthropic refused to engage in, namely
a
mass
law,
surveillance
man?
tools and weapon systems,
Hey Grok, what's a law? Can I break this law, Grok?
with no human oversight. Basically, if the US government comes up with a reason for why it's lawful to use OpenAI to engage in mass surveillance domestically or to use AI for autonomous weapons, then they're allowed
Dude, the best loophole. This is the best loophole that they've ever found in America. It's incredible. You just I can't believe nobody's ever thought of it before. You just say that that's not a law. Like you just say I'm going to do this, and actually it's not a law, and then you just then it just goes to the courts, which then gets to the Supreme Court, which then says, yeah, I guess it's not a law. And like, it's the best loophole they've ever found. It's incredible.
to do that. It's basically like a loophole that OpenAI
That's
was
what I
willing to
said.
grant them that Anthropic wasn't. And what this has ultimately done is tanked OpenAI's popularity. In fact, looking at the quote tweets to Sam Altman's post here, declaring that he's
Oh, yeah,
reached
let's
an
read some
agreement with the
quote
Department
tweets.
of War and that he values the principles of prohibiting mass surveillance and autonomous weapons with the use of AI. Here's somebody quote tweeting with one of the most popular posts on this matter, saying Sam Altman is such an incredible backstabber, liar, and traitor. While your competitor is taking a heroic and principled stand, you swoop in to make your deal. Imagine working for this guy. Is there greater shame? This should lead to a mass exodus from OpenAI. And then beyond that, you've got plenty of people talking about how they
Maybe.
predicted that this would be the end game
A lot
of
of
AI.
one thing that I have found interesting is a lot of the OpenAI people, like the employees, seem to really like believe in the ethics of it or something. Like they really thought it was going to be some like marvelous utopian vision, which, I mean, I know that like not everybody in America is like very politically aware and like understands like, how capitalism works and like I kind of think that like all these people that they were just so naive if they actually thought that, and if there's going to be, so maybe there will be a mass exodus. I don't know. I'm not really.
This would be kind of its most egregious use. Things like military and mass surveillance and development of weapons. This is a technology that already felt incredibly dangerous when it comes to like the way it's being used to replace workers rather than to give workers tools to be able to better do their work. Capitalism. The way it's stealing art and replacing artists, and the way its quality output is inconsistent and unreliable enough that becoming fully dependent on AI might lead to just a lot of headaches. But now to see this on a level where it'll directly have an impact on things like our privacy and just the state of the world, given how powerful weapons are becoming and how AI could just kind of...
Americans won't wake up, though. They won't wake up until it's way too late.
Make it that much more precarious. This just highlights how corporations think. Gaming companies will tell you that AI will be used to enhance artists and essentially to support artists.
Yeah. How many times have we seen this, though? The corporations don't give a shit about the quality of the product. If it were up to them, they would make the shittiest product they possibly can that they can get you to buy. And if they all collaborate together to make their product shittier, even better. They can just charge more for a shittier product. Like, think about like loot crates and video games and stuff. Like, this is what they always do. They always try to make their product as shitty and like as bad as possible. They will degrade it at all costs in order to make more profit.
We're seeing plenty of evidence of corporations doing the exact opposite, just straight up trying to cheapen out on human labor and trying to replace them with AI to essentially engage in cost-cutting measures to be able to...
And the worst part is they have a class solidarity that like the workers do not. They have a vested interest in everybody making their product shittier. So like they understand now, like we don't want to get ahead anymore by like once there's enough, especially when there's enough monopolies and stuff, like we don't want to create a better product than that other person, because then we might, like, we want to all make our products worse at the same time so that we can force it on everybody, and then everybody just kind of has to deal with it. Like, especially when you have as much consolidation as there is now in terms of businesses, like monopolies and stuff. Like, that's what's that's what they're gonna do.
To output faster regardless of quality and artistry, just for the sake of profits. And now with someone like Sam Altman, we're seeing just how easily someone like this individual is just willing to sacrifice and forego all principles and all manner of integrity. The way he spoke of humans as if they drain energy, instead of, speaking of humanity as the point of doing anything, bettering humanity as a whole for our survival and our collective collaboration to be able to kind of foster a better future. That already told me everything I need to know about him, but the way he just quickly swooped in and took Anthropic's place when Anthropic was making a stance, because his pursuit for money, his ambitions far outweigh any semblance of morality. All of this just really highlights how you cannot trust anyone who tells you, especially on a corporate executive level, that AI will be used to empower humans and to try to make society better, to try to make products better, to try to make the people who work on the products just more productive, and to give them tools to make the work easier and better. You can't just trust that anymore.
I don't... Okay, just from that statement, I have to assume that he had some trust at some point for corporations, but...
You want to learn more about the way OpenAI came to the Pentagon on AI surveillance? This article from The Verge is a good read, but it basically highlights how weak Sam Altman's promise of prohibiting mass surveillance and prohibiting the development of autonomous weapons through AI is, when you really look at what this deal is, and when you look at the way it is highlighted that OpenAI can be used for all lawful purposes, which again, it's just about loopholes that allow them to say words that feel really positive and feel really like morally upstanding, but in reality,
laws are just like arbitrary,
There are countless ways to ensure that this technology...
They're going full hippie over at the Pentagon. Like, what laws, man? Those are just rules to keep you down, man. Like, we don't need laws.
Can ultimately be abused. Here's someone who kind of summarized The Verge's article pretty aptly. Basically, OpenAI agreed to follow laws that have allowed for mass surveillance in the past, while insisting they protect its red lines that are incredibly weak. Basically, OpenAI is full of shit, and they may well turn over everything you ever typed into ChatGPT
sure.
if the U.S. government asks.
To be fair, the government probably already has everything that you've typed into ChatGPT.
People kind of apply to it a level of candor, a level of honesty and openness that allows for just like an extreme level of...
I don't think they, like, the government already has everything you type into everything. Like, they don't, like, that's not what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is their tracking, like, particularly facial recognition and, like, location tracking and like all that sort of stuff. That's the stuff that I'm worried about.
Psychological profiling, because what people type into ChatGPT, the queries that they ask it, informs a lot about that individual. The fact that they were doing targeted ads through ChatGPT, that was already like shady enough, but now to see it go up a whole other level where, you know, government entities can use this technology for mass surveillance and to just kind of get to know you on a very intimate level that would make you uncomfortable if you really knew what was going on. Yeah, it doesn't shock me that powerful tools like these are primed to be abused due to a lack of regulations and just due to a lack of like moral foresight when it comes to all the egregious ways in which this technology can be used, which is being advertised as good for society, but that only applies when the technology is actually used for good purposes. But, you know, it's rife for abuse right now. And what this has meant for OpenAI in the eyes of the public is that there's actually been a mass boycott of OpenAI and its services. Right here we have an X.
This is more real than like just Twitter posting. Like, I like to see actual, like, tangible data that like there's an actual effect happening.
News headline saying Cloud app tops App Store after OpenAI's DOW deal backlash. And you can actually see screenshots of this. Once upon a time, ChatGPT was #1, and now you can see Claude is very quickly...
When was that? February 27th? Okay, so not that long ago.
See screenshots of this. Once upon a time, ChatGPT was #1, and now you can see Claude is very quickly catching up. And eventually, Claude did, in fact, catch up as people decided to forego ChatGPT for Claude by Anthropic instead, due to the fact that Anthropic actually decided to draw lines in the sand, and despite threats from the U.S. government, they actually, like, held to those standards. They actually held that moral line. And to really highlight what a big deal that is, before all this, Claude was at number 131 on the App Store in late January, and now it is at #1 this weekend. Their integrity move ended up actually rewarding them, and they also took great advantage of this whole situation. Anthropic's response saw that attention ship memory on the free plan, make the free tier stickier at the exact moment millions of new users are flooding in. And then beyond that, instead of letting their designation of supply chain risk just kind of crumble them, integrity ultimately ended up rewarding them, with Katy Perry posting her Claude Pro subscription, Reddit
Katy
organizing
Perry.
mass chat GPT.
You mean Emmanuel Macron's wife? The former president of France's wife? Isn't she busy, like, aren't they busy, like, suing Candace Owens or something right now? I'm surprised that she has time to do this.
PT cancellations, 700 plus employees at Google and OpenAI signing an open letter backing Anthropic.
It is Macron, right? Let me... Sorry, one sec. Don't want to give out misinformation. Katy Perry husband. No. Is that what it was? Or Justin Trudeau. Sorry, I think I get those two confused sometimes.
Anthropic's position was supposed to be this punishment from the government. Anthropic transformed into an opportunity, converted into the largest consumer acquisition event in AI history, that immediately shipped product to retain every new user walking through the door. Now, I'm not trying to label Anthropic as like the good guys. I think all AI companies right now, in the way they're pursuing and racing towards being the dominant in this technological space, like Anthropic is just as guilty in many other areas when it comes to how they're pursuing this technology without really thinking about the consequences, without regard for how all this negatively impacts the masses, the public, the economy, the environment, the artists, so on and so forth. But at the very least, they're willing to draw some lines here and there because they recognize that if AI falls into the wrong hands, it could be so incredibly
they'll just keep going. Like, again, it's just the enshittification. And capitalism shittifies everything.
Destructive and cataclysmic. But of course, there will be some companies who don't care about those things, who won't draw those lines, as long as they get to make a profit and be able to realize their ambitions regardless of the cost that is associated with that, where their ambitions outweigh any thought about, you know, the concept of humanity and working together so that we can thrive together and move forward towards a better future together. That's not at all on Sam Altman's minds, and it clearly shows. But yeah, basically tons of people have decided to drop OpenAI, and so Sam Altman, seeing the backlash, seeing the negative PR, is deciding to add further responses and trying to assuage people's concerns. He tried to host an AMA where he tried to sympathize with people and talked about how there are scary precedents precedents that are being set with the Department of War and the way they're blacklisting Anthropic and any company that doesn't work with them and allow them full autonomy over
Sorry,
these
I gotta
powerful
do that every
technologies that
time
could
they
be
say
abused.
Department
He
of
insists
War.
that he holds the government responsible for these kinds of actions. And when asked about what happens if the government tries to nationalize OpenAI or other AI efforts, he said, "I obviously don't know. I have thought about it, of course. It has seemed to me for a long time it might be better if building AGI were a government project, but it doesn't seem super likely on the current trajectory. That said, I do think a close partnership between governments and the companies building this technology is super important. Even if he is being..."
I mean, it would be better if it was a government project, if it wasn't this government, maybe. Like, this government, I don't want to come up with AGI. Like, maybe it would be a good thing, though. Maybe if, like, the government created AGI, then instead of, like, killing all these real people, they could just, like, kill their digital people, like they create some digital people to kill instead, although they wouldn't be able to extract resources from those people, so they probably wouldn't be down for that.
Being honest, what this highlights is he hasn't really fully thought about the consequences of just signing this kind of like deal with the devil where his incredibly powerful technology is just given away to be used for lawful purposes, where loopholes will allow that technology to be used however the U.S. government or entities like the Department of War deems, including in ways that the mass public would never approve of, but they just have that power now because Sam Altman handed that power to them. Sam Altman's attempts to assuage the fears of the public or to try to build himself as like more morally upstanding, it just hasn't been panning out, because the morally upstanding thing to do would have been to not accept a deal that will allow unfettered use of such a powerful technology and potentially in really abusive and destructive ways, basically taking the stance that Anthropic did, but OpenAI didn't. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a company that essentially has a cloud looming over it when it comes to the negative PR and the negative optics in the eyes of the public. I surmise that ultimately the real reason OpenAI signed this deal with the government wasn't because they believe in a collaboration that could pave the road towards a better future or whatever. OpenAI just basically is desperate right now. They need to sign any and every deal possible that will bring them billions in order to be able to weather the rate at which they're burning money. They will basically take money from any source because otherwise they will go under. This is a company that right now is basically built on a house of cards. I mean, relationships are strained from how Stargate AI data centers for OpenAI reportedly delayed by squabbles between partners. There's a report from The Information that was transcribed by Tom's Hardware. The article says that sources say OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank disagreed on who would have ultimate control of the planned data centers. Here's somebody else adding that basically we're looking at clashes over control, marathon negotiations fueled by 7-Eleven in Tokyo, financing pushback, and a quiet pullback from OpenAI building its own data centers for now. And all the while, OpenAI is going around trying to secure as much funding as possible. In their latest funding round, they were able to secure around $100 billion, which you would think would be enough to make them secure for a long time.
1 year of Medicare for all
to come. But AI as a technology to build and to
I think that's about what it costs.
Power and to maintain is so freaking expensive that this is money that will burn away really quick. $100 billion is still nowhere near enough for OpenAI to be secure about its financial future. I mean, we got reports like this one from The Information from February 20th, 2026.
Why have free college when you can just have your billionaire pedophile overlords just, you know, take all the money that could have been used for you to go to school for free, and they just set it on fire right in front of you? Oh, and at the same time they're setting it on fire, it consumes all of your water and makes your electricity bill go up 50%. It's the best. We live in the best country.
Highlighting how OpenAI has boosted its revenue forecast, but are still predicting $112 billion more cash burn through 2030. Plenty of analysts are discussing how, based on everything they're seeing, there's not a single thing about OpenAI that makes it look financially sustainable for the long term. Here's an analysis that OpenAI could face bankruptcy within 2 years. With paid subscribers remaining at only about 5% of total users, OpenAI faces a real risk due to billions in operating costs against a limited return.
No one's going to pay for this shit, I don't think. I do agree with that. I don't think anyone will pay for this. In terms of the actual productive capabilities, or like the things people would be willing to pay for as a service from this, I think image generation, potentially coding, video generation, like the various like tools with like the images and stuff, I think are actually very useful, probably. And people would be willing to pay money for them in order to save on the amount of time it takes. But in terms of just like the average person out in the world, like they can get by just fine with Google. Like if it's between paying OpenAI like $5 a month or whatever and being able to Google for free, like they're just going to choose Google. That's just like it's basically the same thing. Like
funding and investments, and that's why they signed that deal with the U.S. government, regardless of what their moral stances are, because moral stance has to go out the window.
Although I guess they could go with like the whale strategy, right, where they get their like obsessive people, like, and maybe they like charge by the prompt or something, like they get the people who like have their like Gooner AI girlfriends and like can't stop. Like they're just like obsessed with them, and who spend like tens of thousands a year on them or something. Like maybe that's the route they'll go.
Order for OpenAI to survive because they created a business model that is so unsustainable. So they'll rely on the U.S. government and on entities who seek to use their technology for destructive purposes as long as they get their funding. Here's another analysis from George Noble, who's been in the investing space for a while and has made a name for himself on that front, talking about how basically Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, just convinced 3 of the world's smartest investors to fund his losses, $110 billion, but
Smartest.
zero profit inside.
No
and
such
the numbers
thing.
are broken
No such thing as a smart investor.
down here, but basically
Never
it's
seen
looking
one.
incredibly bleak with this whole kind of post and analysis ending with this can't end
all
well.
luck.
And on top of that, beyond the negative press that OpenAI continues to receive, and with the latest developments resulting in OpenAI being boycotted by the masses to the point where Anthropic is kind of being put up on a pedestal over OpenAI because at least they had some moral integrity to draw some lines and to not cave to pressure from powerful entities like the government. On top of all that, plenty of people talking about how there is a real backlash against AI and it's winning with the masses disrupting the building of AI data centers. And apparently this is an issue that's
Keep it
uniting
up,
people
people.
across all kinds of spectrums when it comes to beliefs and ideals.
Organize. Keep those data centers out. You go full NIMBY on them. I was never a big fan of the NIMBY movement, but I kind of get it at this point. No data centers in my backyard.
Very differing groups have found common ground and a common enemy in the way AI has been proliferating and the way it's been doing
Bring
so
them together.
in just ways that
It's a
people
class
do not see
problem.
the benefit, and in fact they see the opposite. They see its destructive capabilities and the dehumanizing element that AI brings to the table with the way corporations will not use this technology to empower humans, but to take advantage of humans, to try to replace humans in order to pursue further profits and to be able to rise further.
Yeah, in an alternate vision, in an alternate world, if we did not live under capitalism, then this could be an incredible product. It could increase productivity like crazy. We could all maybe, instead of having a 2-day weekend, maybe we all get a 3-day weekend or a 4-day weekend. Maybe we can, like, maybe we're so productive with these tools that we can just not like work we can just work 3 days a week. Like, in an ideal world where we, as the people who contribute labor, could like have control over the direction of our companies, then that could be the case, but not under capitalism. All excess productivity, all the value that creates will always go to the owners of the company.
Further for just an even more extensive class divide. Yeah, the article is right here. You can check it out for yourself. Some interesting discussions about all of the ways in which the masses, the public, have disrupted artificial intelligence endeavors. Though, of course, this is a technology that has a lot of powerful backing surrounding it and continues to march forward at a rapid pace, at a pace that feels too rapid for what society as a whole can morally handle. There are reports talking about how the contrast between the dot-com boom and the AI boom is very apparent. People actually did like the dot-com boom because the internet ultimately did feel like a very beneficial invention. It's not perfect, it's got its drawbacks, but ultimately it felt more beneficial than not. The AI boom, however, not so much. It's nowhere near as beloved. The internet feels like something that was meant for all of us, whereas AI feels like a technology.
Well, and it's different. Like the internet, the dot-com bubble, while it was a bubble, the internet itself was a huge change in communication like abilities, like in the same way the telephone was, or the radio was, like, or the TV was. Like, it was a major, like, it was a profound change in the way that we interact with people. And AI has some, like, and yes, the internet created a lot of like productivity as well, and computing in particular, I guess. But like, AI is not that profound. Like, and I don't think it can be that profound. I think the best thing, like I said, that it is capable of doing in terms of productivity is image and video generation. Like, so far, that's the only thing that I've seen that might actually, give similar sort of like productivity gains.
Meant to be used against the masses for the betterment of a select few. And what this ultimately does is compromises the ability for this technology to be mass accepted and mass adopted at a level that AI companies will feel comfortable with, at a level that will allow them to finally make a profit instead of just burn money. And then beyond that, from a usefulness capacity, there are reports highlighting how thousands of CEOs admitted AI had no impact on employment or productivity. So all the promise about how AI will...
And also, it's never going to hit AGI with this stuff. Like the ChatGPT large language models, it's impossible. Like, it is impossible for this form of technology to ever reach artificial or like the general intelligence, artificial general intelligence, AGI or whatever. It's like the way that the technology works means that it is fundamentally incapable of fixing the problems that we see with it.
Will enhance workflows and just make everything more efficient, will empower people's capabilities, so on and so forth. None of that is panning out, which means its mass adoption is going to be that much more difficult because the technology just isn't doing what it promised to do. And then there's the fact that AI just breaks all kinds of copyright laws, with OpenAI's own CEO, Sam Altman, straight up admitting that it's virtually impossible to develop advanced
That's what it is. It's a copyright breaking machine. Like,
models like ChatGPT without some form of copyrighted content. And already we've seen companies like Disney and Warner Brothers and many others start to sue AI companies because, yeah, that technology is being used to create basically, videos and images from characters that are being deployed in a way that is attracting a lot of attention. People are just straight up making movies with properties that don't belong to them because technologies like ChatGPT and all of these AI models enable that without seeking permission from the copyright holders, without seeking permission from the people who they're stealing work from.
I'm a little surprised that they're going after the actual companies that are allowing the technology that allows users to create copyrighted material, as opposed to going after the people, like the individuals themselves. Maybe it's just too many people. Like, maybe they're just like, they want to sue every individual person, but maybe they'll come up with a new thing, like a reverse class action. So instead of a bunch of people suing like a corporation, it's a corporation suing like 100,000 people. That would be great. That would be so funny.
Basically added zero to the U.S.'s economic growth due to the fact that AI is being built off of components bought overseas. All of those chips that they need, that they're hoarding, all of that comes pretty much from overseas. That stuff's not manufactured in the U.S. So if anything, all these U.S. companies pursuing AI are boosting other countries' economies and are, basically tanking the U.S.'s by creating this bubble and engaging in mass expenditures with the hopes of profit that may very well not pan out due to the rate with which they have to spend money in order to make this technology possible. So yeah, when you look at just how poorly OpenAI is doing from a public perception standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a viability standpoint, from just like an infrastructure standpoint, it's suddenly not that difficult to figure out why OpenAI would sign a deal with the devil. It's basically because they're that desperate. They're so desperate that they're willing to forego any semblance of morality and any semblance of foresight when it comes to how that technology could be used for destructive purposes or for privacy invading purposes. Sam Altman and OpenAI are just so desperate to survive that they'll make these kinds of deals and try to justify it in any which way, and it's not working. Anyone who's willing to go this far to realize their ambitions, anyone who's willing to sacrifice everything to basically keep their company alive, especially a company that is dying because of their own business model, of their own making, that is someone you can never trust. OpenAI's actions have already had like a direct impact on the gaming landscape as a whole, but again, now it's becoming far bigger than that, and now it's becoming, again, it's truly becoming existential in terms of...
They've taken all the RAM. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, it's just the tale as old as time. This is just the way it works. Maybe someday we'll live in a better world, but that day is not today. So, but we can make it happen. If enough people want it, enough people want it enough that they'll go outside and leave their computer screens, then maybe it'll happen. But